I want them to come away with. Leadership in continuous improvement is about developing people, and it's about being present, observing the work, and listening to the people who do the work. And go to your workplace, whether it's you're running a museum or running retail company, get to the workplace. Start learning, start seeing how people are struggling, how the customer is suffering. And that's where I think you need to start.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Gallagher, and today we're bringing in a profound industry voice to talk with us today. His name is John Rizzo. He's the president of Basin Holdings and the managing partner at 𝗏𝗏 as well. He's a strategic leader with some deep expertise across several different industries. We're going to talk about this: manufacturing, healthcare, and energy. And I know we're going to get a chance to talk about those 30 years of experience, and know that going back about 30 years, John was very instrumental in me getting started on my continuous improvement journey as well. We're looking forward to that. He's the author of the soon-to-be released book, Creating Value, where he shares his experiences from over 30 years of facilitating 1,000 workshops, more than 40 organizations, and ultimately where he asserts that real wisdom doesn't happen in the C-suite alone, but also happens right out on the factory floor. I can't wait to hear more about that. And he ultimately, he has stories to share that are very simple, like moving a big factory machine just 6 inches that ultimately resulted in $1 billion in value. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit and what that really means. But I think he's going to challenge some of our assumptions this conversation today about creating value or versus extracting value in organizations, and how continuous improvement can be very impactful. John, that was a lot of wind, but I want to welcome you to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited about our conversation today. And look, I want to dive right in because I was intrigued by the story in your book right off the bat. And I know we are connected a little bit in the same company. You open up with a powerful story about moving a machine, $1 million machine, just 6 inches, and how by doing that, something that small made a huge impact in the business from a value standpoint and created millions of dollars in savings. Tell me a little bit about that story and how the 6 inches can turn into millions of dollars of value.
And this is really a defining moment in my career in terms of my leadership development. And it goes back to Kraus Heinz, a manufacturer of electrical construction materials. We had 1 million square feet and functional departments, which means we had specialized equipment organized by the type of equipment and assembly in a different area, everything all spread out. And I had learned about continuous improvement from one of our customers, and I wanted to bring this to Kraus Heinz. And so it was our very first workshop. And what we were going to do was try to create flow, move some of this equipment, put it all into one area. We call that a cell, to be able to keep the work moving, to get it to the customer faster, to be able to discover quality issues sooner. Number of other reasons. So we spent the first couple of days figuring out what we were going to move. The second day, we were going to move this equipment into this cell, and we didn't have the equipment to do it. So we had to bring in a company called a rigger to move this equipment, and it was very expensive, and they moved all this equipment overnight. And the next morning, we came in, and the operator said, if we had just moved that piece of equipment 6 inches, he wouldn't have to reach and turn as far. And I'm thinking, wow, we just spent all this money last night. I can't afford to move this equipment again. And our coach at the time, 𝗏𝗏𝗵𝗏, said, move the piece of equipment 6 inches. And I said, well, all right, I'll listen to my coach. And we moved it 6 inches. The next day, the operator said, wow, I can't believe it. You actually listened to me and did something. And it turned out that operator was a union steward and was very influential. And he said to the other people in the union, hey, let's give these guys a chance with this continuous improvement process because, they listened and they actually made my job better and they made this production process better. And that really started the continuous improvement journey at Kraus Heinz and at their parent company, and was one of two defining experiences for me in developing my own leadership style and skills.
John, I love that story, and especially the story, again, having a connection there as I worked for Kraus Heinz as well. First of all, the fact that that was 30 years ago is just unbelievable in terms of that
I
story
had hair.
when you guys started on that, and when you had hair, right, exactly as we go through this. But, ultimately, how the respect for people component of what we did was so important, and listening to others and the profound impact that that had, and put you all on a journey to make significant change and improvement inside that organization. We'll talk about some of those results here in just a little bit. But the name of your book is Creating Value, and that was really the essence of what you were doing in that conversation. Who did you write this book for, and why did you write it now?
So I wrote the book to share what I had learned over 30 years with people who maybe are not involved with continuous improvement. So for people that this is something new, where they maybe heard about it, wanted to learn about it. And my hope was that rather than talking about what it is, I'd be able to share examples that would help people really understand what this process is about. So it was for the non-continuous improvement practitioners to really learn from the stories in the book.
Now, you talk about that in terms of creating value. That's the title of the book also is very important, because early on in the book, you talk about the difference between creating value and maybe a more traditional approach inside of continuous improvement, extracting value. Tell me the difference in those two and how that philosophy is different in your mind.
So, first, I'd like to define value, because it's a notion that means a lot of different things to different people. And I actually have a kind of a page of the book here, and I define value as what's important to the recipient, and it starts with what's in the title of the book. It's what's important to employees, then customers and stakeholders. I list the employees first because maybe we'll get into it, but I think it's an important part of the premise. But what's important to customers, what I've learned over the years is, it's different to different customers or different employees, but for employees, clear expectations and responsibilities or standard work, training and resources necessary to be successful, safe and decent work environment, and fair compensation. So, that's typically what's important to employees. And so when we talk about creating value in the book, it's how can we do those things for the employees? And again, I list the employees first because my personal philosophy, that's where this starts, with the employees. Next, it's creating value for the customer. What I've learned over my career, defined in terms of quality, on-time delivery of a product or service, and reasonable cost. And then finally, it's what's important to the stakeholder. Those are the owners of the business, and that's to provide exceptional products or services and financially effective. So, kind of going back to your question about the ways of improvement, and traditionally you may have private equity companies that are focused on financial engineering. They're leveraging debt, they're selling assets, they're doing multiple arbitrage. This is different. This is not, I've done those things, so I'm guilty. But, the book is about not creating value that way, but creating value through, making improvements in those areas that I just mentioned.
I used to love that. We talked about that at the end of every one of those improvement workshops, where we look at all three corners, if you will, of that three-legged stool: the employee, the customer, and the shareholder. And I love how you put the employee first in terms of that conversation. And I know one of the other unique commitments you had was that you wouldn't have layoffs as a result of any continuous improvement workshops or continuous improvement activities. Tell me a little bit more about that as well. Obviously, a focus on the employee and creating value for them.
So, I mean, why would somebody participate in improving their job or improving the workplace if they're going to lose their job or their coworkers are going to lose their job? So, we've had a long-standing, policy, and all the companies I've worked with, we've never laid anybody off as a result of improvement. It just stops the whole process. Now, we can capture that productivity that's identified through, deploying those people when, somebody retires, maybe they can fill a retirement, or if the company's growing, then, rather than going outside, we can fill it from within. So it's a really important part of the process.
Love that continuous improvement as a growth strategy as well. Again, benefit for the employees in terms of long-term employment and not having layoffs, benefit for the shareholder in terms of being able to grow the company with the resources that you have in place there. So, John, you've experienced this over 30 years. You've either been on the operations side of continuous improvement, or you've been on the teaching side or consulting side of helping other organizations make improvements. In the stories that you've seen with over the 40 organizations that you've worked with, what are some of the ways that organizations fail in trying to implement a continuous improvement philosophy?
So, the first thing that comes to mind is they treat this as a toolbox and apply tools as opposed to a system. So really, in my years when I was consulting, we'd have companies come to us and go, we're doing these workshops or lean events, but we're really not getting the results. And I'd say, well, let's see your, value stream analysis and your improvement plan. Let's see your strategy deployment. Let's see, the area profiles or the scope documents for your last workshops. Let's see the report out. Let's see the KPIs that are measuring those results. And I'll get, well, we're just doing lean, or we're just doing Kaizen events. So it's treating it as a toolbox, not as a system. And the second failure point is not leading from the top. Sometimes organizations, will have somebody who had some experience with this at another company. They'll go to a new company and they'll think, I'm going to start doing it. If their boss, their ownership, their board doesn't believe in it, it's very difficult to kind of push a string. So those are the two failure areas.
Yeah, no doubt that one. If you don't have commitment from the leadership of the organization early on, it certainly will dilute the effectiveness of the results. You might be able to try a couple of things with tools, but you're not going to change the culture inside the organization. Now, and again, one of the core principles in your book from a leadership on how they, in essence, overcome those failures is to go see. Tell me a little bit about that philosophy of go and see.
So, going back to the Kraus Heinz example, that was the first time that I understood the impact of being present, observing the work being done, and listening to the people who do the work. And that's really become the kind of the center of my leadership style, and has really been the key driver that I've seen to really transforming a business.
John, you've had some great mentors in this space as well. And you talked about how you did things traditionally. I mean, you didn't start out coming out of college as a continuous improvement guru, but you certainly had to learn. But you and I have had some great similar mentors along the way. Bill Moffett, Bob Penland. You've also worked with some phenomenal CEOs, Art Byrne, and you've been even in Japan trained by the Japanese, who really will say were the pioneers of the Toyota production system, and working with Nakao as well. What was it about those mentors and how you went into that and were able to change your leadership from maybe a more traditional approach to this continuous improvement? Was there a moment for you that helped transform your leadership style?
The moment was that Kraus Heinz
The
example,
6 inch bump, yeah.
but the over time, what I learned from those mentors was, the second concept, which is key that I feel to my success as a leader, and that's the importance of people development. So, when I started, I thought these workshops were all about let's get the work moving faster. Let's discover quality sooner. But what I came to realize from those mentors is that, the purpose of this workshop was not just to make some change, but was to develop the people
Mm.
into being problem solvers. And that kind of, like I said, is the second element of kind of my leadership style. And, this whole continuous improvement is really, it's about people development. And I can't underestimate the importance of that, or, having learned that from my various mentors.
I love that on the people development side. And you're right, the workshop, the improvement activity, that's the engine of change where you have folks together in a group and make change happen pretty rapidly. But ultimately, it's the teaching of a methodology in terms of problem solving that they can take back to their workplace. That's powerful as well. That people development is very important. John, how did you develop yourself inside of this space as well? So one of the ways is on these workshops, but what else did you do as your personal development as a leader inside of an organization to continuously get better?
Yeah, so early on, I had the opportunity to participate in workshops at other companies such as 𝗟𝗰𝗵𝗶. I learned about continuous improvement from that company. They were a customer of Kraus Heinz, and when I did a stint in sales, that's how I met 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗶 and met 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and learned about this process. And Art was a very good mentor to me and allowed me to participate in what they call President's Kaizens and do workshops at 𝗟𝗰𝗵𝗶. I also had the opportunity to participate in workshops through my mentors at various other companies. And that was a really powerful way for me to learn about this process. So it was really learn by doing. And I have done study trips to companies around the world, which also helped. But it was really the kind of the participation in the workshops across broad industries that really helped me develop.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to CoachJohnGallagher.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's CoachJohnGallagher.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode. Think about that. The term that comes to my mind as we continue to move forward, it might be leader standard work. What are those things that leaders need to do to continuously grow? It's participating in those events. It's learning from others going on that journey as well. And it's going on those gimbal walks, if you will, and learning from others. The other piece of standard work is once we do these activities, we're really developing what we believe is the best known way to do a process or to work on a process. Many times the employee, while we put that first, employees, they might be a little bit like cowboys and they kind of like to do things their own way, if you will, and to put it back in the way that they have it. My guess is you've experienced this at some point along your journey where you need to balance the need for standardization with the fostering of a continuous improvement environment where you have the employees engaged. How did you deal with that when that popped up? Hey, I want to do it my way instead of the standard work way.
Yes. So, first, standard work, maybe people may be unfamiliar with that. It's a little different. It's a work instruction. It's a little different than a policy or procedure. It's got some key elements to it. It's time-based. It's actionable by the people who do the work. It reflects quality and safety. It's at point of use. And it's almost impossible to improve if you don't have a standard to improve off of. So we create standard work. It's the best way we know how to do it. And then everybody has to do it that way because we want consistent quality, experience, our customer experience, safety. But wait a minute, I got a better way. Well, great. We need to be able to listen to people and incorporate their ideas into the process. And, empowerment is in the title of the book. Empowerment is people having the authority to make the change to that standard work, right? It's not trying to create their job every day. That's chaos. It's being able to make suggestions to make improvements. And, one company just popped into my mind where we created standard work for handling an insurance claim. And there were hundreds of people that now had to do that insurance claim that way every time. Again, a consistent quality, customer experience. And within a very short period of time, we made 50 improvements to that standard work because people felt empowered not to try to figure out their job to do it their way, but they knew the standard to work off of, and they were able to make suggestions to make improvements. Another company makes airbags. Every employee makes a suggestion every week to change standard work. Multiply that by, over 1,000 employees, everybody making a change to standard work every week, and you get double-digit productivity improvement every year forever. And nobody knows how they did it. There's no secret or magic. It's all these small changes adding up. And again, people being empowered to not figure out their job, but to, make changes and to have the skill, to have the authority, and to have the skills to make changes to these standards.
Love that. And you kind of took in the next question of sharing some stories, some success stories from organizations who have had success. I love to hear those stories as well. What about a leadership story of success where you helped to transform a leader? And what I mean by that is early on in the journey, I think I make up, and I've seen this in some of my teaching, that the leaders want to delegate the improvement and let somebody else do it. But we know that they have to be involved. Do you have a favorite leadership story where you've seen a leader transform, become a better leader as a result of this work as well?
So my favorite area, I have a lot of stories on this. First one that came to mind was a company that manufactures medical implants. And we started off by doing what we call a value stream analysis, looking at the whole business, from the beginning to the end, everything they do, trying to come up with where the biggest opportunities for the improvement. So to start, we're going to go walk the flow of manufacturing this part. And the executives were on this team, and we started walking, and we got through the first building, and the manufacturing was in several buildings, and it started raining really hard. And one of the executives said, well, we can go back to the conference room. We don't have to go to the other building. We know what goes on there. We'll tell you, we can tell you what's going on. I said, no, if the parts are getting wet, we're going to get wet. And we followed that part, and it was, it traveled over a mile, that one simple part. And when we got back to the conference room, the head executive, he had, literally something just went click for him about being present, of being out there, being present in the workplace, and the importance of that. And, the realization that, wow, if I hadn't been present, I wouldn't have known how bad this really was. And we wouldn't be as aggressive as we're going to be with making some improvements and doing a better job for those poor employees who had to carry those products through the rain and all that distance. and of course for the customers. So uh, one of my one of my one of my favorite stories.
I love those stories, especially those executives that realize, and it's oftentimes it's the employees, again, back to the employees on the shop floor who have that impact. One of my favorite stories working with a client where the CEO, wore his blue jeans in and his tennis shoes to help clean equipment on the last day as it was getting ready, because we talking about pristine equipment, but them taking a videotape of him down on the floor, scrubbing the floors and scrubbing and painting the equipment, was a huge impact on the people in terms of modeling the behavior that he was wanting inside of his organization. That was on the very first improvement workshop that we had done there. So very, very important in that journey.
And it's difficult. It's difficult for leaders to be present for a number of reasons. I mean, the biggest is it requires humility to
Mhm.
recognize that you don't know everything. And it's difficult for some leaders to show that humility and to go to the workplace, and that can be a retail company, a service company, a manufacturing company, and to be transparent that they don't know everything and can be humble. But it's very
Mhm.
difficult for some leaders to do that.
Love that. Humility being one of those important characteristics of a leader who's going to be successful. What are a couple other characteristics that are critical to the success of the executives, of the uncommon leaders who succeed in this space?
So, my list is pretty focused. It's being present, observing the work being done, listening to the people do the work, and people development. I mean, that's really how I define leadership. Of course, if you've got some CEO, of a multi-billion dollar company, their job is to create the vision and share the vision. But, most leaders, we're talking about this frontline supervisor who just got promoted to their first leadership job, or we're talking about, their boss, these managers. It's sharing the vision maybe is not as important, but being present, observing the work being done, listening to people doing the work, and focusing on people development, to me, it really defines the leadership position. I mean, it's how I define my leadership, and I think it's so important to those jobs. And so many of those, lower level leaders are promoted into their job because they're the best firefighters,
Hmm.
and they stay in that firefighting mode, and they don't realize that we've got to use continuous improvement to take waste out of their job so they can spend, the majority of their time developing the people around them. So those are the two. And you may remember in the book whenever I hire a new leader or promote a new leader, I give them a sign, and in huge letters on the sign, in the upper left-hand corner, it says people development.
Hmm.
And then in medium letters in the middle, it's make improvements. And then in really small letters in the bottom of the sign is everything else. It's
Hmm.
PowerPoints and meetings. And people think they're important if they're in back-to-back meetings all the time. No, I mean it's people development, make improvements, and then everything else. And that's
Wash,
my view
wash,
of
rinse,
that's my
repeat.
view
You
of
talk about
leadership.
it.
Good or
Yeah.
bad. That's
Yeah.
that's how I look at the world. It's
When you
pretty
can break
simple.
it down to something that's simple as well, it really can be, that simple. We as leaders have a tendency, maybe it is sometimes a lack of humility, of
Mhm.
overcomplicating it. I love that in terms of, go and see, listen to the people, right? People development. I mean, those are very simple criteria that we often make it very difficult. John, when you also top line, it's natural tendency. We have manufacturing stories that are really powerful here. But in the book, you say the system works everywhere. What do you mean by that? It works everywhere. How does it work everywhere?
So anytime, any type of business, whether it's a government or retail or a non-for-profit organization or government, right? Everybody does work, right? And anytime you do work, it might not be optimized, right? We call that, there might be waste in the process. So, there's waste everywhere. And, we need to get that waste out of it and put standards in place that, can get us to scalable, repeatable processes. And so, I mean, it's also pretty simple. I mean, it doesn't matter what your job is, there's probably some waste in it. We can probably get some of the waste out and standardize it so there's a basis to improve on in the future.
Love that. And I can tell you, in anything you go into, there is waste in that process. We know they beat that into our heads that 90% of a process is generally waste. And the first time through, you usually only get about half of that waste out of the process. So you've got to go back through it multiple times again, against wash, rinse, repeat of that cycle of improvement. It's another way we have to overcome with employees. Like, we just did this area. Why are we going back and doing it again? I love one of the stories they had at an organization. We did an event workshop in one flow cell, as you defined it, 9 different times. And in the last flow cell, we were looking for 3 seconds just to improve that output and understand what was happening. So to be able to have that continuous improvement. What's that?
My story at 𝗬𝗰𝗵𝗶 that I tell in the book, where they had a changeover for a rolling mill, which basically takes steel, rolls it into a channel to go on a wall for raceway to go through. It was 2 shifts to change that over from one product to another. When I finally got to do a president's Kaizen, I mean, it was down to 15 minutes, and we got it down to under 10 minutes, which is the goal, is to be able to do any changeover under 10 minutes. I mean, that was many, many workshops to get it from 2 shifts down to under 10 minutes. And by the way, a side story, my teacher at the time, Mr. 𝗏𝗏, said, we wanted to show off, right? We got it down. We finally, with a team that got under 10 minutes. And he said, not good enough, 5 minutes, and walked away. I mean, it's about continuous improvement, right? That's what he was telling us. You can always get better, always get better. And I've been fortunate to be in a lot of workshops, probably around 1,000, whether I'm as a manager or as an investor or as a consultant. And I've yet to have a workshop where we haven't made a process better. Some get further than others, but we can always find a better way.
So hard and so good. John, I want to ask you about the book specifically. So folks are going to read your book once it comes out. We're going to get a chance to tell them where to go here in just a minute. But I think about the response that you want after they read the book. What do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel after they've read your book? And what do you want them to do? Think, feel, and do.
So, I want them, the two takeaways that I want them to come away with. And, one is leadership and continuous improvement is about developing people. And it's about being present, observing the work, and listening to the people who do the work. And that's really the takeaway that I hope people get when they read the book. And the call to action is go to your workplace, whether you're running a museum or running a retail company. Get to the workplace, start learning, start seeing how the people are struggling, how the customer is suffering, and that's the call to action. Go. That's where I think you need to start.
Love that. I love that call to action. Go to the workplace. Go see what's happening. Things are never as we think they are. They're always as we see them happening and looking at the organizations. John, I appreciate that. I know at the time of the recording and then when we're going to publish this, it's going to be before the book is will be published later in the fall, and we'll get that out. But where do you want folks to go to learn more about you and about the book? Maybe get an advanced copy of the book as well.
So if you go to, if you search on creating value, John Rizzo, it's available for pre-sale on all of the, book selling sites. The book's being published by Wiley, and they've done a nice job of making it available for pre-sale. So whether it's Amazon or Barnes and Noble or, any of the commercial book sites, it's available for pre-order. And, I will say if somebody does want to do a bulk pre-order and would like to do a 90-minute workshop about the principles in the book, all they have to do is just send me a note through Instant Messenger, through LinkedIn or email. And we'd be glad to do a 90-minute workshop with the team about some of the key principles of the book. And no secret, we're going to talk about people development because it's really,
going and seeing people development. I think it's going to be a big part of it, right?
What it's all about,
people,
right?
Being present.
But we got, happy to share a lot of, examples, behind that.
John, I love that. I appreciate you investing time with the listeners of the Uncommon Leader podcast today. You've been very gracious with your time. I want to finish with the question that I always ask my first-time guests, especially at the end, but I'm going to give you, it's probably already been said, but you're going to have to say it again anyway. I'm going to give you a billboard, and you can put any message that you want to on that billboard. What is the message you're going to put on there and why?
People development.
Hashtag people development. I think it's there. I think, John, I think that solves, again, so many issues inside of organizations, frankly, inside of our homes, inside of our communities as well. If we were focused on developing people into the next spots, I think it's so powerful. I appreciate your time, John. I wish you the best on the book launch. I can't wait to put it up here with my other lean books that are sitting up here with Art Byrne and 𝗠tože𝗃𝗏𝗧 on there and a few others. It's going to be right there beside it as we go through it. So best of luck.
Thank you, John.